The metallic hum of the facility was constant, a low vibration that seemed to crawl through the bones. Elias stood with his palms pressed against the reinforced glass, staring at the figure inside the containment chamber. She wasn't like any alien he had seen in the archives. Her skin shimmered faintly under the sterile lights, a pale crimson glow that seemed alive, almost pulsing with emotion. Silver hair cascaded around her shoulders, ragged and tangled, yet it only added to her otherworldly beauty. Her eyes locked on his with desperate intensity, her hands mirroring his on the glass. "Open the door, human," she whispered, her voice muffled by the barrier, yet somehow piercing through. "Free me, please." The plea carried both command and desperation, an impossible mix that made Elias's chest tighten. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to remember the directives. She was dangerous. Her DNA was classified as a potential threat to human sovereignty. And yet, staring at her now, she looked anything but dangerous, more like a cornered soul stripped of dignity. Elias had been briefed before this assignment. The prisoner, designated Subject Naira 7, was the only known survivor of her species after the annihilation of her colony on Titan's frontier. Her genetic code contained anomalies, resilience to radiation, accelerated healing, and something else the scientists wouldn't explain. Something they whispered about in half-sentences when they thought he wasn't listening. That something else was why they had locked her away instead of letting her vanish into the void. Naira's lips trembled as she pressed her forehead to the glass. "Do you know what they will do to me? They want my blood, my marrow, my life. They will tear me apart until there is nothing left but charts and data. You can stop them. You can let me live." Her voice broke on the last word, and Elias's breath caught. He'd seen prisoners beg before, soldiers even, but never like this. Never with such raw, aching truth. He forced himself to look away, but the sight of her lingered. His training screamed at him to keep distance, to remember she was not human, that empathy could compromise him. But part of him, the part that had lost comrades in the name of science and progress, wondered if she was right. Wondered if maybe he was complicit in something monstrous. The intercom crackled overhead. "Unit 4, report status," barked a voice. Elias straightened, clearing his throat. "Subject Naira 7 remains secured. No disturbances." His voice was steady, rehearsed, a mask he wore with ease, but his pulse betrayed him, thundering like drums. When the intercom clicked off, Naira tilted her head, studying him with unsettling precision. "So you lie for them," she said softly, her breath fogging the glass. "But I see it. Your heart is loud. You do not want this." She raised her palm again, pressing it against the barrier. "You feel it, don't you? That this is wrong." Elias clenched his fist, stepping back. "You don't know me," he said, harsher than he intended. Yet her words pierced deeper than he wanted to admit. Because she wasn't wrong. He hadn't slept properly since they assigned him here. Every shift felt like an eternity of guilt. Naira's eyes glistened. "Then let me show you. If you open this door, I will not harm you. I will not flee blindly. But I cannot remain their specimen. Please, Elias." His name on her lips was like a brand searing into him. He hadn't told her his name. How did she know? A chill swept through him. His instinct told him to call for backup, to report her breach of protocol, but curiosity rooted him to the floor. "How do you know my name?" he demanded. Her expression softened, almost tender. "Because I remember voices. I hear the ones who guard me, who speak in shadows outside my chamber. And because I know you are the only one who listens when I speak." Her words carried no accusation, only a strange, haunting gratitude. He wanted to deny it, but his throat closed up. Instead, he asked, "Why me? Why trust me?" Naira leaned closer to the glass, her voice barely audible. "Because you haven't looked at me like a specimen. You look at me like a person." The words hit him harder than a bullet. He stepped back, running a hand through his hair, trying to breathe. This was dangerous. This was everything they had warned him against. And yet, standing here, he realized a line had already been crossed. She raised her hands higher, pressing her entire body forward against the barrier, her silver hair falling across her face. "If you do nothing, I will die. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. And every piece of me they take will scream your name, Elias, because you stood here, and you did nothing." The facility lights flickered. A routine power shift, but in that moment, It felt like the entire station held its breath. Elias stared at her, his heart splitting between loyalty and something he could barely name. He remembered the oath he had taken, to protect humanity, to obey command. But as Naira's molten eyes searched his face, he wondered, what did humanity mean if it demanded cruelty? What did loyalty mean if it silenced his conscience? The door hissed faintly, as though reminding him of its presence. One code, one override, and she would be free. But beyond that choice was a storm he might never survive. Naira whispered again, her hands trembling on the glass. Please, Elias, be more than their jailer. Be the one who remembered mercy when no one else would. He closed his eyes, her words echoing through him, each syllable a weight. Somewhere deep inside, a decision was forming, dangerous and irrevocable. And though he tried to push it away, he knew the moment would come when he would have to choose. The glass stood cold and impenetrable between them, but Elias had never felt so close to the prisoner within. And for the first time since this assignment began, he feared not her power but his own. The hum of the facility returned, steady and merciless, as though mocking his hesitation. Elias opened his eyes to find Naira still watching him, her lips parted in silent plea, and in that silence, a dangerous truth took root. His loyalty was no longer to the walls around her, but to the fragile hope inside them, and with that realization, Elias knew his nights of obedience were numbered. Progress, wondered if she was right, wondered if maybe he was complicit in something monstrous. Elias had told himself for years that obedience was survival, but staring into Naira's eyes made that excuse feel hollow. The next morning, the facility corridors buzzed with sterile efficiency. Scientists in white coats passed him without acknowledgement, murmuring about schedules and samples. Elias walked in their midst like a ghost, every step weighed down by Naira's words. He could almost hear her whisper in his ear, be more than their jailer. At the observation deck, Elias was briefed by Dr. Mavrin, the lead geneticist. Mavrin's voice was clinical, detached like he was discussing a machine rather than a living being. Her cellular structure is remarkable, the doctor said, scrolling through streams of data. We've confirmed resistance markers that exceed known models. With further extraction, we may replicate her resilience in human embryos. Elias felt his stomach churn. Extraction? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Mavrin barely glanced at him. Incremental harvesting of tissue and marrow. Routine, she'll be sedated. The word struck Elias like a blade. Sedated, harvested, broken down into parts. Naira had been right. This wasn't research, it was dismantling a living being. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to remain outwardly calm. To protest now would draw suspicion. Hours later, back at her cell, Elias found Naira waiting at the glass as if she had known he would come. Her hands were steady, but her eyes brimmed with a restrained terror. They spoke of it today, didn't they? She said, her voice low. I felt the shift in the air. They planned to take more. He stiffened. How do you always know? Naira's lips curved into a sad smile. When you are the experiment, you learn to sense the hunger of those who study you. Their silence is louder than screams. Elias wanted to tell her she was wrong, that the scientists weren't monsters, but the words died in his throat. He couldn't lie to her, not when he carried the same unease. Instead, he stepped closer, lowering his voice. You were right. They won't stop until there's nothing left. Her eyes softened, relief and sorrow mingling. Then you know what you must do. The phrase made his pulse spike. He shook his head, his hands curling into fists. I can't just open the door. If I do, alarms trigger. Soldiers come? We'll both be dead before we make it 10 steps. Naira pressed her forehead to the glass again, her silver hair falling around her face. Then find another way. You're human. You adapt. You survive. That is why your kind has spread across the stars while others burn away. The compliment unsettled him, as much as it flattered. Elias had always thought of humanity's spread as conquest, not resilience. Yet hearing it from her lips made it sound almost noble. That night, in the silence of his quarters, Elias lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His mind played through impossible scenarios, disabling the cameras, rewriting the door's sequence, smuggling Naira out under the guise of transport. Each idea ended the same. Caught, executed, branded a traitor. But another image haunted him more than his own death. Naira strapped to a table, her glowing blood siphoned into cold tubes. That image was unbearable. The following day, Elias lingered near the console outside her cell, pretending to check logs. His fingers hovered over the keys, his heart pounding as if the system could sense his hesitation. Naira's eyes followed every motion, her expression unreadable but intense. Finally, she whispered, "If you wait, they will cut me apart piece by piece. If you act, we may both burn. But at least then I die free, not dissected." Her words hit him with brutal clarity. Freedom or dissection? No middle ground. No illusion of safety. He stepped back from the console, shaking his head. "I need more time." Naira closed her eyes, a single tear slipping down her cheek. "Time is what they are stealing from me." As he walked away, her whispered plea clung to him like a chain. Elias felt something inside him shift, subtle but irrevocable. The man who had once believed in orders and structure was beginning to fracture, and in that fracture something dangerous and unstoppable was starting to take root, edge down her cheek. Elias carried that image with him long after he left the containment wing, the fragile glimmer of her defiance etched into his mind. For the first time, orders felt like shackles rather than structure, and every step he took through the facility echoed with the question he no longer dared avoid. How long could he stand by before her words became a prophecy? The following days blurred into routine, but beneath that surface calm, tension gnawed at Elias's core. He reported to his post, monitored systems, and answered to his superiors with the same practiced discipline he had perfected over years. Yet all the while his eyes sought her cell at every opportunity, and each time Naira's gaze met his with silent demand. The glass between them seemed thinner with every passing hour. During a late patrol, Elias lingered in the observation bay, watching as Naira curled against the corner of her chamber. She looked smaller than he remembered, her glow dimming slightly as if her body struggled against unseen strain. For a moment he wondered if the scientists had already taken more than he realized. A pang of guilt ripped through him. His silence, his obedience was already killing her. Sleep offered no refuge. His dreams were haunted by visions of Naira bound to a table, her silver hair spread like liquid light, her chest rising and falling slower and slower as cold instruments drained her. "In the dreams," Elias screamed, but his voice was swallowed by alarms and orders. He woke each time drenched in sweat, heart racing, certain that his hesitation was as deadly as any scalpel. On the fourth morning, Dr. Mavrin intercepted him with a data slate. "We've scheduled an extraction for tomorrow. Marrow this time." Her resilience should yield promising results. The man's tone was clinical, as though he spoke of routine maintenance, not a sentient life. Elias clenched the slate so hard his knuckles whitened. He managed only a nod before handing it back, afraid that his voice would betray him. Later, Elias stood outside her chamber, the hum of the glass barrier vibrating faintly beneath his palms. Naira rose from her corner and crossed to meet him. Her movements were slower, deliberate, but her eyes burned with undiminished fire. "It's tomorrow, isn't it?" she whispered. Elias swallowed hard, unable to deny it. Naira placed her hand against the glass, her crimson glow faint but steady. "Then you must decide, Elias. Do you follow their chains or do you break them? Every second you wait, the choice is made for you." Her use of his name rattled him. It wasn't the cold designation of God or human. It was personal, intimate, a tether he hadn't realized he craved until that moment. He pressed his hand against hers, the glass still an unyielding barrier between them. That night, Elias made his first move. Instead of returning directly to his quarters, he detoured into the security hub. With careful precision, he studied the patrol rotations, the blind spots in the camera sweeps, the maintenance intervals where alarms could be temporarily suppressed without raising suspicion. The data etched itself into his memory like a blueprint of defiance. The risk was suffocating. Every keystroke felt like a confession, every glance at the monitors a spotlight on his betrayal. Yet beneath the fear, a strange calm settled in. For the first time in years, his actions were his own. By the time he left the hub, his heart pounded with both terror and exhilaration. The plan forming in his mind was far from perfect, but it was real. A chance. The next evening, Elias returned to her chamber. Naira was already waiting, as though she had sensed his decision. "You've chosen," she said softly. It wasn't a question. He nodded, his throat too tight for words. Naira's expression softened, hope flickering across her face like dawn breaking through storm clouds. "Then we must be swift. Tomorrow when they come it will be too late. Elias leaned closer, his voice low, urgent. I can't promise safety. Only freedom, for as long as we can hold it. Naira's eyes locked on his, unwavering. Freedom is worth dying for. But I will not die in their cages. Her conviction seared through him, burning away the last remnants of hesitation. Elias realized then that the true danger wasn't in betraying his orders. It was in doing nothing. For the first time, he felt the weight of the choice lift slightly. Tomorrow the glass would no longer stand between them. Beyond the hatch stretched the void, stars smeared across endless darkness, framed by the steel lips of the station. Cold air rushed past, carrying the metallic tang of machinery. Elias steadied his breathing, forcing the tremor from his hands as he pulled Naira through. The enormity of their step weighed heavily, but her fingers tightened around his, and in that grip was purpose stronger than fear. They sprinted along the narrow maintenance gantry, boots clanging against grated metal. Each step echoed like a challenge to the alarms blaring behind them. Searchlights burst to life across the decks, cutting through the gloom in desperate sweeps. Elias ducked low, guiding Naira into the shadows, their breaths harsh but controlled. Every flicker of light on her skin felt like a beacon, threatening to betray them. The facility groaned with pursuit. Orders barked through intercoms, boots hammering steel, the mechanical hiss of powered doors sealing routes. Elias's map of escape unraveled by the second. Yet Naira moved with uncanny precision, her senses guiding them past patrols, her body responding as though the station itself whispered its secrets to her. Elias realized he wasn't saving her alone. She was saving him just as much. A squad of guards appeared ahead, rifles leveled. Elias pulled Naira into a service hatch, heart pounding. Inside, the space was narrow, suffocating, lined with humming conduits. The heat pressed against his skin, sweat pooling at his brow. Naira leaned close, her breath ghosting his ear, whispering directions. He followed her instinct, weaving deeper into the maze until the sound of boots faded to nothing but memory. Time stretched thin. Every second they lingered was another chance for discovery. Elias's chest burned from the pace, but adrenaline pushed him forward. Naira, despite her weakened body, glided through the tight passages with fluid grace, her determination lighting the way as brightly as her glow. For her, captivity had ended the moment the glass door opened. Now nothing could drag her back. They emerged into an auxiliary hangar, cavernous and dim. Rows of dormant shuttles rested like sleeping beasts, their hulls glistening under emergency lights. Elias's pulse quickened. Here lay their chance. If he could power one of them up, freedom was within reach. But as he pulled Naira forward, the heavy doors behind them slid open with a grinding roar. Dozens of soldiers poured in, weapons raised, their armored figures stark against the hangar's shadows. Elias shoved Naira behind cover, drawing his sidearm with grim resolve. He had never been a hero, never sought blood, but the choice had been carved for him. He fired, the sharp retorts cracking across the hangar. One soldier fell, another stumbled, yet still they came, relentless. Naira crouched low, her eyes burning. With trembling focus, she extended her hands. Crimson energy rippled from her palms, surging outward like a living flame. The soldiers staggered, shielding their eyes as the glow seared their vision. Elias stared in awe, realizing for the first time what they had imprisoned her for. Her blood carried more than rarity. It carried power, but the effort cost her. She faltered, collapsing to her knees. Elias rushed to her side, pulling her close. "Stay with me," he whispered, voice raw. Her eyes fluttered, but she nodded, forcing strength into her trembling body. He hoisted her up, half carrying her toward the nearest shuttle. Gunfire sparked against metal, shouts growing closer. Elias reached the shuttle's ramp, slamming his fist on the manual override. The hatch hissed open, lights flickering to life. He dragged Naira inside, dropping into the pilot's chair. His training hadn't covered flying, but desperation made quick learners. Fingers flew across controls, coaxing the systems awake. Engines roared, their vibration shaking the hangar. Guards surged forward, firing wildly. Sparks erupted across the hull. Elias clenched his jaw, slamming the throttle. The shuttle lurched, shattering restraints as it rose. The hangar doors above struggled to open, creaking against alarms and lockdown protocols. Bullets rattled, explosions bloomed, but the shuttle clawed for the sky. The gap widened just enough. With a cry torn from his chest, Elias thrust the engines to maximum. The shuttle scraped through, metal shrieking as it tore free into the vacuum. Silence swallowed the chaos, replaced by the infinite black of space. Stars spread before them like scattered fire. Elias gasped, trembling as the weight of escape hit him fully. Naira stirred beside him, her glow faint but alive. She pressed her hand against the viewport, eyes shimmering with tears. "The stars," she whispered, voice full of wonder and ache. "I thought I would never see them again." Elias looked at her, truly looked. She was no longer a prisoner or a mission. She was a life he had chosen to protect, no matter the cost. "You're free now," he said softly, though the tremor in his voice betrayed the uncertainty ahead. Naira turned to him, her expression fierce despite exhaustion. "We're free," she corrected. Her words bound them tighter than any oath. The shuttle drifted into the void, pursued still by distant signals and vengeance, yet untouched for this fragile moment. Elias adjusted course, seeking a trajectory away from patrol routes, away from chains. He didn't know where they would end up, on some hidden colony among sympathetic rebels or alone on a barren world. But every option was better than captivity. Silence stretched, broken only by the hum of engines. Elias's shoulders sagged, tension bleeding from his frame. Naira rested her head against his shoulder, her glow pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat in rhythm with his own. For the first time in years he allowed himself to believe, not in orders or survival, but in hope. Behind them, the facility shrank to a speck, its glass walls reduced to memory. Ahead, stars stretched forever. Elias exhaled, his grip tightening on the controls. Whatever came next, they would face it together, fugitives but alive.